Welcome back. Let's turn our attention now to the war in Gaza, where residents are saying farewell to relatives and friends who had been killed in Israeli airstrikes on Tuesday. An Israeli airstrike hit the tents of displaced families outside a school in the town of Abasan, east of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, killing at least 29 people, most of them women and children. At the site of that attack, eyewitnesses recounted the events that unfolded after. One said there was a group of women and young men who were just sitting and having a normal day when suddenly a rocket fell over them. Another eyewitness said they were suddenly hit with no forewarning or anything. Israeli forces have defended and deepened their incursion into two Gaza City districts, with soldiers carrying house-to-house searches in some areas and tanks shelling several homes. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says that 60% of Hamas militants have been killed or wounded as a result of Israel's military offensive in Gaza. Speaking at the Israeli parliament, Mr. Gallant said that Israel had broken up the majority of 24 battalions that Hamas's military wing had at the start of this war. Answering lawmakers' questions, Gallant said the draft notices will be delivered in the next few weeks to some ultra-Orthodox Jews who had previously been exempt from serving in the military. Well, Israel's Supreme Court ruled last month that the Defense Ministry must end the long-standing exemption for ultra-Orthodox Jews from mandatory military service. But Gallant also said the armed forces need more recruits to keep Israel safe and sustain the war against Hamas militants group in Gaza. And staying in Israel, children and relatives, hostages today caged themselves outside the Israeli parliament in a display aimed at pressuring the government to advance a deal to release them from captivity. The display comes on one day after negotiations are set to resume in Qatar to secure a ceasefire in the Gaza war and release the hostages being held in Gaza for more than 9 months now. Families of hostages seized in October 7th Hamas-led attack have held weekly protests in Israel and held meetings with foreign governments to call for the release of their loved ones. Well, there were more protests today, this time from mothers of Israeli hostages. Only this time the demonstrations were silent. It was to commemorate 9 months since the sons and daughters were abducted by Hamas militants on October the 7th last year. The mothers sat in front of chairs laden with their children's belongings and their pictures. They said nothing for 9 minutes. The event was called Mom is Waiting. Efforts to secure a hostage deal between Israel and Hamas in Gaza after 9 months of war have gained momentum in recent days, with officials expressing optimism but saying that gaps remain between both sides.
We've been here a few mothers of hostages that we just sat here in front of things of our children and just wanted to emphasize that we miss them, that they are not here to be here with us. We are the mothers. There is no love like a mother love, and we just want to ask everyone that involved in the negotiation to do whatever they can to make it happen. There is a deal on the table, and we need to do everything we can to make it happen.
This event is really important because it's connecting all the people to the moms. They see us sitting and waiting for 9 minutes. It's 9 months now and 2 days since my son Idan has been kidnapped by Hamas to Gaza. And I think it's really important for everyone to see how tough is just to sit still, not to move, not to drink, not to talk. It's very, very hot here in Tel Aviv. So it's also making the effect how hard it is just to sit and wait. And I thought of Idan the whole time, by the way, because I was like having all the sweats and fear, and it was very uncomfortable to sit like this, without moving and without drinking and nothing. And I was thinking about him, and it makes me really, really sad.
Well, let's bring in VOA's correspondent Ricky Rosen, who is in Tel Aviv. Hello, Ricky. Thank you for joining us on The World Today. Let's talk about these protests. It is heartbreaking to see relatives and mothers express this emotional burden of waiting for their loved ones to return. I mean, you can only imagine what they feel at the moment. But what other events have been holding in Israel to commemorate the 9 months since Hamas attack?
Well, I actually went to photograph and interview some of the family members in the cages outside the Israeli parliament, and it was heartbreaking. They had a recording of mothers screaming that they missed their kids, that they were afraid for their kids. They're approaching 9 months as a milestone, and having demonstrations and marches, because mainly focused on the families of the female hostages, because it is feared that after 9 months, they could be pregnant because of the reported rape of their and even giving birth in captivity. So a lot of the demonstration marches have focused on trying to call attention to and save the female hostages after 9 months.
Yeah, well, thankfully, the protests are very organized. They're quiet, reflective of the purpose. It remains the same, as we know, but the aim is to pressure the government to help release the hostages. What has the Netanyahu government done about this?
Well, they say that there is, for the first time in months, a realistic deal on the table, that Hamas has responded and accepted that they would release hostages without a permanent ceasefire already in place. And once again, Prime Minister Netanyahu has moved away from what he previously said that he approved, and said that there are red lines that are crossed and that it has to be further examined. And once again, the families of the hostages and a large majority of the Israeli public is going out in the streets and demanding that he, in fact, act to accept this deal. It is reported that once again he is having a problem with a deal that is on the table, because he fears that the radical right-wing members of his coalition will bring down the government if he goes ahead and agrees to a ceasefire.
With the attack on Khan Yunis, residents in Gaza feel the displacement camps were actually targeted. I know the Israeli army hardly responds to accusations about military operations, but has there been any response to this?
They have in fact maintained, it's very difficult to confirm whether it's true, that there were Hamas command centers and rocket launchers that were found in schools and mosques very close to where the refugees were, and that those were their targets, and that once again the killing of civilians nearby was what is called collateral damage.
But this is part of the idea of ground operation in Gaza against Hamas. How long are they hoping to this phase would actually last?
Well, they've maintained that they pretty much finished the phase of fighting. But the problem is that each place that they evacuate, after having fought there and said that fighting was finished, gets reoccupied by Hamas fighters once the Israeli army leaves. So now you see them returning to Gaza City, Shujaya, which is also in the center and north of Gaza, places where they finished, or they announced that they finished fighting months ago, but Hamas fighters have emerged from the tunnels and have started attacking Israeli forces from those areas, and now the army is going back in. So it's uncertain when this phase or the war in general would actually be considered finished.
But is there any way to confirm the number of Hamas militants killed by IDF forces since this offensive began? I mean, according to the defense minister, Yoav Gallant.
It's impossible to know for sure. That's why they give numbers that are very round estimates, like 15,000 fighters were killed. They know when they are fighting snipers, they know how many they killed. They know they're fighting a unit. They see the body. When airplanes bomb Hamas targets, they never know how many killed.
Oh, okay, Ricky. I was going to ask you, but the audio is not very audible. But a member of Israeli government says that Hamas cannot be defeated. Is that a belief by many Israelis as well? Let's see if we can hear you better now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you very well. Yes, we can.
I think a large portion of the Israeli public is coming to believe that this is not a war which can end in what Netanyahu claims will be total victory. As I said, Hamas keeps on reappearing in places that months ago were claimed to be freed of Hamas fighters. They reappear in force and they attack Israeli soldiers, and they have been even launching rockets at the same communities, Israeli communities surrounding Gaza that were hit on October 7th. And I think most of the military and the politicians and the public recognize that this is not something which can end in a total defeat of Hamas.
Even though we hope that it ends soon. But thank you very much, VOA's correspondent Ricky Rosen, for your time and your contribution on The World Today.
Thank you.